What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and it has been a while since I put out my last video, but with the NFL Combine taking place this week, I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of jump back into my off-season content. So going to be looking forward to making pretty consistent videos moving forward. Took a couple months off, but we are back here. So I'm going to be updating my round one rookie rankings. So going through my top 12 Superflex rankings after the NFL Combine. So definitely a few shakeups here and there after the Combine. If you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. As always, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. What players do you like more than me? Which players are you a little bit lower on? Let me know, and I'll make sure to get back to you. But let's just jump right into it. Going to be splitting these players up into tiers, and not much has changed at the top for me in these rankings. In tier 1, I'm going to have Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. Those guys are still my 101 and 102. Neither player tested at the Combine, but there really isn't a huge need to see the numbers from either of these guys. Caleb Williams should be fine as a quarterback. I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to light it up in terms of his speed, his jumping, all of that, but overall, he's athletic enough to get it done. We saw that throughout his college career. For Caleb Williams, he measured in at 6'1", 214. So if there were any size concerns out there, those are definitely squashed. I expect both these guys to stay in tier 1 all the way through the NFL draft. Now, shifting into tier 2, I'm going to start it off with my quarterback 2 and my quarterback 3, Jayden Daniels and Drake May. Now, I could definitely see an argument for Drake May being over Jayden Daniels. I'm sure some people view it that way. For me, it's just going to come down to the ceiling of these players. I think they're both probably going to be picked somewhere from pick 2, maybe at the latest, pick 6 for these options. So I just think looking at the ceiling with Jayden Daniels' rushing upside, I just think he's the guy who could really break that quarterback ceiling, get up there with some of the top options at the position fantasy-wise, the Josh Allens, the Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. I think Daniels is much more likely or has that kind of upside compared to Drake May. Now, continuing on with tier 2, going to have Malik Nabers. I have him slightly behind Marvin Harrison Jr. in this wide receiver class, but he is really right there. He's definitely not getting blown out by Marvin Harrison Jr. He was productive in year 1, had a strong year 2 breakout, and then a monster year 3 with over 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns. Did not test at the Combine, but I think he'll test very well at his pro day. Definitely not concerned about the athleticism with Malik Nabers. And then just looking at where he could go, I expect him to go somewhere in the top 10, probably closer to pick 5, 6, somewhere in there. I think if he lands on the Chargers, that would be just the perfect landing spot, the perfect situation, pair him with Justin Herbert. So that's what I'm rooting for, but if he gets that top 10 draft capital, I'm going to feel very, very good about Malik Nabers. And then wrapping up tier 2, I'm going to go with Brock Bowers, a tight end who had great production throughout all 3 of his college seasons. But honestly, of all these top wide receivers that I'm going to talk about, Brock Bowers was the better weapon in year 1 as a freshman. He was the clear top weapon on a Georgia team that won the national championship in his true freshman season. He has that upside of an elite ceiling at the tight end position. He could be the guy that's, picked as the clear tight end 1 for years to come moving forward. I think he does have that type of upside. I imagine this is probably where most people are going to have him slotted in their rookie rankings. I think it's kind of interesting because the last time we were talking about a tight end prospect like this, it was Kyle Pitts, and he hasn't necessarily panned out from a fantasy perspective. Still think he will in the long run, but it hasn't really come through. But on the other hand, we've seen some of these younger tight ends that maybe weren't viewed as good of prospects have some really strong production in their first or second seasons. This past year, Sam Laporta, you have Trey McBride breaking out, Dalton Kincaid looked great, and those guys don't even come close to Brock Bowers in terms of being NFL prospects. So very high on Brock Bowers here. Really like this class overall, especially here in the first round. Now shifting into tier 3, it's actually just going to be a one-man tier. It's going to be Rome Odunze. Some people might have him as their wide receiver 2 ahead of Malik Nabers, Personally, I can't get there, but I still think he's a very strong prospect. I'm just kind of in this spot with him where I have him firmly below Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, but I also think he's clearly above the remaining wide receivers. And I do have Brock Bowers just a tier ahead of him due to the positional advantage. I think if Brock Bowers hits as like an elite tight end, I think he does become more valuable than Rome Odunze hitting as a top wide receiver. So that's kind of why I have those guys split up. But now moving into my fourth and final tier, this is where we definitely see the most movement from my last rankings video. I'm going to start off with back-to-back quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. I'm definitely not set with them in this order. Draft capital is still going to be up in the air. At this point, I'd expect both these guys to get picked in round one. If one of them fell out of the first, it would probably be Nix, but like I said, still a lot up in the air at this point. Bo Nix has obviously shown more throughout his college career, but he's also 3 years older, so he's had way more opportunity to put stuff out there and kind of develop in college. McCarthy obviously doing a ton of winning, but maybe wasn't asked to do as much as Bo Nix, especially in his last couple of seasons. Michael Penix is someone who actually drops out of my top 12. I just think the draft capital isn't looking as strong as it was, a month or two ago or after the college semifinal game. And then after these quarterbacks, I have 3 straight wide receivers to wrap up my top 12. So I'm going Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin, and then Xavier Worthy. Thomas didn't have a huge impact in year 1 or year 2, which is something you would like to see if you're drafting these wide receivers. But then he came in, put together a monster year 3, 68 receptions for 1,177 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns, came in at 6'3", 209 pounds. So he has that solid size. He ran a very impressive 4.3 4.40, which was kind of overshadowed because you had Worthy just, absolutely light up that 40 time. But a 4.34, especially at that size, very strong out of Brian Thomas. At this point, I feel like it's pretty likely that Brian Thomas Jr. is at least going to be picked in like the middle of the first round. I feel like he's earned that. And I think in terms of a rookie pick, he will be a very strong late round 1 option. The next wide receiver here, Troy Franklin, has a very solid production profile. He had a nice year 2 breakout, then a big year 3. I think the potential question marks that we have here with Troy Franklin is just going to be what is his ceiling. He's 6'2", but only 176 pounds. So definitely has a fairly slight frame. He's a huge deep ball threat. 17.1 yards per reception in 2023, so he can definitely make those big plays. He had a solid 4.4 140, but I think what was interesting, and I didn't see a ton of people talking about it, he actually had the slowest 10-yard split of any wide receiver. So the fact that he ran the 40 pretty fast, but had the slowest 10-yard split is a little odd. I guess it does line up with his skill set of beating dudes downfield, but is that going to limit some of his ability, in the short to intermediate areas? We will still have to wait and see, but his college production is nice. I don't think the NFL likes him as much as the Dynasty community does, so maybe he slips into round 2, but late round 1, early round 2, that's probably what we're looking at here with Troy Franklin. And then the final player in this tier is going to be Xavier Worthy, and he's got to be the biggest winner from the combine. It didn't start off great just in terms of his measurements. Came in at 5'11", 165 pounds. That is a very, very small frame. I know some people may just write him off because of that size. We did see Tank Dell, who I actually think was the exact same weight, obviously lighted up in his rookie season. Tank Dell is definitely kind of an outlier, but he's definitely not just left for dead based on that size, especially the way we've seen some of these slider framed guys have success. Devonta Smith, Jordan Addison, some other guys that kind of come to mind here. But so he has those measurables, but then he goes out and sets the record with a 4.21 40-yard dash. He also jumped very well in the high and broad jump. He has a pretty unique production profile because he had one of, if not the best freshman season in this wide receiver class, 981 receiving yards at Texas, 12 touchdowns. That is insane production as a freshman. And he had strong numbers in his next 2 seasons, but honestly wasn't really able to replicate what he did in year 1. So you would have liked to see him take some leaps from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. We didn't necessarily get that. I feel like he's probably best suited as a team's wide receiver 2, but after the combine performance, I definitely expect him to go in the first round, potentially late first. We'll see how that develops, but I think he's definitely worth a pick, kind of, 1-2 turn in your rookie drafts. So that's going to wrap it up for my top 12 rookie Superflex rankings. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. We'll continue to put out content more consistently like I mentioned at the top. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.